strength and conditioning coaches, I'm not going to name names, are on social media saying, yeah, we recommend using steroids, right? I've been using them my whole career. You're hearing people say that now. And it's like, what has happened to our culture?
One of our main claims here at Sports Muscle Technology is that we guarantee improved performance. Now, how can we make such a claim without something like PEDs?
Well, it's interesting because, performance enhancing drugs are going to be guaranteed to improve performance. That's just what they do, right? But, obviously in many situations it's illegal, right? It's unethical. It's really immoral if you're going to be somebody that's competing in athletics and you're not supposed to be taking PEDs, even though we know it's very rampant. And I guess, I'm just kind of a pure heart type of person. And, coming through college athletics, you're terrified to take anything because you're going to get, tested and, pop hot and be embarrassed in front of your family and your school and all that type of stuff. Yeah. So as I was coming out of, college and grad school, it was always this mission to try to figure out, well, I get it. You can cheat, right? And you can find ways to improve your performance with PEDs. But I always remember people talking about, well, you eventually become dependent on them, right? To the point where now you can't live your life without taking PEDs. You can't compete. You never feel confident. Right. And I know we've talked about this before. I really believe that a physical therapist and a strength and conditioning, trainer or whatever you want to say, their real main focus is to improve somebody's self-efficacy, right? To improve their confidence in themselves and their ability to perform. Right. That's really what it's all about. Right. So you don't want to make somebody dependent on some drug, right, that they have to keep taking that we already know is going to damage their body over time. And it's just really not sustainable, right? So I wanted to find a system that was going to be guaranteed to improve performance without performance enhancing drugs, right? So the question was, how do you do that?
How do you do that, right?
Right. So one of the things that it really starts with is what we call this evaluation-based protocol. Right. So this idea of evaluating, right? Well, at first you start with an assessment, right? And you're assessing these biomechanical characteristics and the way somebody's moving and their muscle balance and all that type of stuff. Because if we can find these deficits, right? And if an athlete has these deficits, especially because a lot of these deficits are related to injury.
And almost all of them do. On some level.
I've only had maybe three athletes in my entire career for 15 years here that haven't had deficits, right? So once we find those, we know that we can improve their performance by addressing them, right? And it's a simple, efficient way of doing it, right? But you also got to think, how inefficient are you being if you have these deficits, right? And most athletes don't know what those deficits are, but they know that they have them.
And again, coming back to the wobbler, it's something you can do proactively. Right? You put them on this device, they can self-correct, and that leads to instant change.
Yeah, the neat part about the wobbler, and this comes back to the research on ACL tears and most injuries, really what we're talking about is this idea of what you always like to say, proactive, dynamic postural stabilization, right? So when you break that down, it's just really how well are you at controlling your movement in space, right? Which again is athleticism, right? But when we look in the nerdy science literature, it's dynamic postural stabilization, right? When you're reading the research. But what it is, it's your ability to control your body while you're moving in space. Right? So the wobbler is one of our first go-to things to allow us to do that because you can train postural stability dynamically in a proactive manner, which is also safe and low impact, right? And while doing that, and we address these deficits, you're automatically going to see an improvement in the efficiency of your movement, right? I always, and I remember I met with this research guy in Tampa, University of Tampa, like 7 or 8 years ago, and they were researching HMB and creatine and a bunch of different bioenergetic supplements to try to improve performance. And I said to him, well, did you ever think of maybe testing to see if they have one leg that's weaker than the other? Right? Because every athlete that I come in contact with has one leg that's weaker than the other because we know this right-handed, left-handed issue where you have a side dominance problem, right? This side dominance problem also occurs more, I think, in athletics because most of the movements are rotational from one side and not to the other, right? If you're a fighter, you're always punching with the right hand on the power side. You don't typically switch and train to the other side. So you, over time, develop this rotational side dominance. And we see it. When you do the testing, we see it.
Right.
So coming back to guaranteeing performance, especially without PEDs, right? That's where sports muscle technology comes in, right? Because it's literally what it was designed to do.
Specifically equipment.
Specifically the equipment, right? It was designed to allow us to convert strength that we see with most athletes in the weight room type of scenario and transition it into power and power endurance, right? To be more explosive, right? And be able to sustain that power over time.
Yeah, very, very rarely do I have an athlete squat 500 pounds on their heels and say, go be athletic, right? That doesn't transfer. But getting on the isokinetic machine, that does.
Right. And our challenge is, right, when we're trying to take modalities like barbells and dumbbells and apply it to athletic movement, it doesn't transfer very well, right? Those pieces of equipment weren't designed specifically to improve your vertical jump, right? It wasn't designed specifically to improve your rate of force production, right? All of our equipment was designed for a specific particular thing that was designed to increase this transfer from your training into your performance. And even if it's in your daily life, I like this new word that's being thrown around right now for life-leets. Right? We have life-leets and athletes, but everybody in this day and age needs to be able to perform, right? Whether it's mental or physical, we need to be able to perform at a high level, right? Especially for athletes, right? And now for athletes, where it comes into is that I really believe, and this is, my career, that they know what they're doing is inefficient. They just don't know that there's an answer. Right? They don't know that there's something that can actually transition them from this sense of anxiety to being super confident that they know that they're actually getting what they want out of their training.
Isn't that funny too? And I could name so many elite athletes who feel just like that.
I think they all do.
Yeah. On some level they do. They hide it well, but they feel that.
I'm really liking staying on this thread with talking about, PEDs, right? Because they're so rampant right now. One of the things that we're seeing is that strength and conditioning coaches, I'm not going to name names, are on social media saying, yeah, we recommend using steroids, right? I've been using them my whole career. You're hearing people say that now. And it's like, what has happened to our culture, right? Well, you have to argue it's because of these inefficiencies that we're talking about. People don't know how to get straight to the point efficiently, right? So they're either beating themselves up so much, or just from a mental standpoint, they have such a lack in confidence in what they're doing that they have to use PEDs, performance enhancing drugs, to either recover or to get the results from their training, right? The thing that makes me nuts is that you see young athletes following these guys now, right? And those are the role models, right? Have you ever heard of Bigger, Faster, Stronger, that documentary, right? Yeah. It shows that we're looking at athletes like The Rock, for example, or Mark McGuire and these guys in the past as examples for us to follow, right? And this is focused more on men and male athletes, right? For the most, not that women and females don't take PEDs, but you're seeing it probably more for men. But you got to look at that and go, well, why do they have to take this drug? Right? Because they're lacking in the confidence in their training, right? They don't believe that their training can get them to the level that they want ultimately, which is this high level of performance.
And it's just, there's so many people doing it. It's almost like some of these kids feel like they have to do it to keep up. And there is a solution. It's out there.
Yeah, well, that's the cool part. The true performance still comes from improving your biomechanics, right? And improving your ability to create power and force and be more ambikinetic and all of these things. And ultimately, which leads to this efficiency in your training over time. So, and ultimately, you really have to look at, and this is one of my rules in life in general, is that, you got to think about things for the long term. Right. And unfortunately, we live in this kind of microwave society where people are really focused on the short term.
Instant gratification.
Right? I'm sure you know about that study that they did a while back where the Olympic athletes said that they would basically take PEDs despite the fact that they might die in 10 years. It was like 80% of the athletes said that they would do that, right? Which is just absolutely nuts, right? So when we think about training and performance, especially around the world and what people are doing at Olympic training centers all over the world, they think about long-term athletic development, right? And taking kids from, 6th grade to 26 years old and peaking them for the Olympics, for example, right? And what is that, right? It's an investment, right? And when we think about what we're doing with training, we need to think, are we making a good investment here or a bad investment? Right? And one of the reasons why I came across this idea and wanted to talk about is because people are starting to use these power meters, right? The accelerometers to see how fast they can move the bar and those types of things. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily bad, but it's like, well, you're going to invest in that, but then you're not going to invest in being the best athlete that you possibly can be through improving your biomechanics. Right?
Seems a little one-sided.
Right, exactly. And the thing, this is another one of my goofy terms that I created was philometric, right? The love of the numbers, right? This love of quantifying everything, right? I think that's one of the reasons why people love to lift weights, right? Because you lift it a couple of times and the next thing you know, oh, I lifted 10 more pounds, right? So you keep thinking that you're getting better by quantifying this linear change in your strength, for example, right? But it never ends up truly applying, right? And it's not necessarily that it's a bad investment, but it's not necessarily the best investment, right? And the people that get the most and the best results are the ones that know how to invest their time, right? And their resources wisely, right? One of the best investments that you can do, first of all, is to do some type of evaluation-based scenario, right? Where you're doing an assessment so you're not guessing, right? And you want to use a system that's going to progressively improve those deficits and also start with the end in mind and understanding what running, jumping, and throwing and change of direction biomechanics are all about so you can actually see a true improvement in those performance characteristics. I think the conclusion that, we come to over the years, of doing this, both, we've talked about this, we both have had these issues, right? We all want to feel good, right? And have some improvement in our performance from the training that we're doing, right? You're probably lying to yourself if that's not the case, right? If you're putting in all this work and you're not really looking for some improvement in your performance functionally, you want something that's going to transition into your daily life. Right? First of all, if you're in pain, you have to address that problem that you're having, right? Whether it's the pain physically that you're having, or you're having some pain of really trying to overtrain to get to this goal that you're not reaching, right? Get it addressed now, because if you let it go for a long period of time, years and years, where are you going to end up? Right? We know that you're not going to end up in a good place. So let's get straight to the point. Fortunately, Sports Muscle, we've done that for you. We've created this system that is entirely comprehensive, that's designed to address all of these issues. So I've been kind of joking around with people about this, but I say, well, what's the best exercise that you can do, right? The real best exercise that you can do is called the crystal ball exercise, right? And what that requires for you to do is to look into, this idea of having a crystal ball and looking into your future and thinking about, if you keep doing what you're doing right now, where are you going to end up? Are you really going to end up with the results that you're looking for? Or are you going to end up with some situation that you really don't want, ultimately ending up on my physical therapy table or on a surgery table, right? When the answers are here, if you're looking into that crystal ball and into your future and you want to see an improvement in your performance in your life or in sports, look no further than Sports Muscle Technology. So you guys know what to do. Smash the like button, leave a comment, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel for more information.